about the scope and the impact of what types of explosions we're going to have on our historical buildings and what have you. Like I said, there's more questions than answers right now, and in going back to, and I'm going to go back to ACUB myself. One of the things that we find incompatible in there is that under ACUB, and I'm not against ACUB. In fact, I don't have necessarily the same view about ACUB as some folks. I think that you and I have discussed having some discussions about what can be put in that area up on the upper part of the county as part of that from an economic development standpoint and that kind of thing. So that would not actually affect ACUB, but there are concerns, I think, even in some areas where there may be some growth issues and stuff like that, even though it's a part of another nonprofit, that it could cut into our tax base in the future, and it will. And that's not saying that the program's not a good program, that it's not a good deal for people, that it is, and we realize that it's private and it's a pure choice. And I'm not accusing the Army of anything with that. I don't particularly think that the county or any of the residents are meaning it that way. But one of the things I found interesting in that is when you look at the environmental impact for ACUB, that there are properties beyond Portobago Bay that those rights were purchased under that program, and the military impact on that property. And I don't know how that relates to the EOD school. This is one of the questions I'd like to have answered and reconciled. Is there was an incompatibility problem with residential usage, whether it's farming or whatever other use there is. You have residential usage in between that particular piece of property and your borders, and then you have a finding of no significance under the environmental impact. And I'm assuming that the environmental impact, from what I've read so far, that the noise and things like that are environmental impacts as well as part of that study. Yeah. Okay. So that's a disparage. Not that it may or may not be explained away, or that we can't ask for testing and other things to be done. Just that on the surface itself doesn't look like we're getting two answers. And so I think that from that standpoint, I would like to at least try to draft more questions based on some of those items, and based on some of the federal findings that I've found in, say, the executive order and some other things, and get those answered from the Army.
Yeah. I don't see any problem with that. I think we can do that. Okay. And I think, like we had said, there's a lot of misunderstanding of what ACUB is about. And I think maybe under a separate venue, we could go into more detail as to what it is as part of a larger DoD program. To comment on test shots, I think that's what you're asking, test shots. And that is part of the process, but I will comment on it. We are looking aggressively with doing that. Okay. In fact, our protocol that we're working with, Mr. Heinbach had said we would receive that after we're finished, take a look at it. So Port Royal will be brought into that process of how that's going to be situated and how that's going to be going to bear out.
Because if there's truly no impact, we should be able to tell that from those testings, I imagine.
Correct, but the 1969 NEPA law, okay, looks at factors, okay. What is found and signed to for a FONSI is not always consistent across the board. Okay? It's a funny law.
Well, one of the things we did find, and I hope I don't take up too much more time, but one of the things we found, and one of the things we discussed with our congressman, was the fact that in Virginia, that one of the things that they use as a criteria is the fact that if it's not an incorporated facility, it's sometimes not counted. In Virginia, we have areas where that, i.e. Ladysmith and some of the other areas, that if we were to do the same thing, may not have been looked at as closely by folks that are doing this on the outside. And the only real incorporated area was the town of Port Royal. So I think that there's been some, I think we've gotten through that part of it, but that's where we started from, and that's one of the reasons that we looked at this and went, there's something wrong here. So just to give you some background, because I know you were not here, Commander. Yeah. That's all the comments I have, gentlemen.
Do any other board members have comments at this point?
I have one.
Mr. Chairman, the only thing I would like to say is the fact that, we've heard from both sides, and as I've always thought, there are two sides to every story. And certainly the people from Port Royal have made a good argument tonight, and I appreciate that, as well as the Colonel has made good comments as well. There's been a request for this board to approve a resolution about this impact. I would certainly be hesitant tonight to support a resolution until we have heard more about what is going on. And I think we need to hear more about what's going on from both sides on the issue. Tonight is the first time that I recall, and having just retired, I'm getting older, and I understand that. But this is the first time that I can remember of us having this detailed of a discussion on this issue as a board. Now, maybe individual board members have had that discussion, but not as a board. And I would hate to see us to approve and pass a resolution that's going to be in favor of or in opposition to a particular matter without further discussion, so that we all can make a very intelligent decision as to which way we should go in supporting. Not that I don't support my neighbors. I live on the west side of the county, but I certainly support my neighbors over in the Port Royal area and appreciate every single one of them. And so, but that's not the issue. But I think it's an impact on Caroline County that we need to be very careful with and do the right thing for both parties. That's what I would just ask this board to consider. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Seeley? Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would just like to consider drafting a resolution for the board to examine. I know that the general told me there was interest in the Army of hearing from the elected local governing body, and I think that we need to, as a board, look at these issues. And Mr. Popowitz and I sat through, I don't know, 3 or 4 hours, as did Lieutenant Colonel Hafner and the general, of comments, and all the folks that are here tonight were all there as well. And I think we as local government need to either ask some questions in a resolution that we have to make sure that we're on the record asking some things that are not clear. In my comments, I talked about that the county, from the I-95 corridor all the way to the Rappahannock River, we're all involved in this, whether we were sitting next to the ordinance or not. It affects the entire county, both real estate property-wise and in just general conversation around the region. Don't go to Caroline County. It's, the AP Hill noise is unbearable everywhere. That is something that I don't think is fair or true, and I think that those kinds of things we need to address as a board with the fort, and in some sort of a resolution asking some questions so that we're all clear as well. So my request would be that we take the next couple of weeks, we have another board meeting on the 26th, and try to develop amongst the board members and our staff a resolution that we would all agree on, that would help all of us understand and actually give the Army something to come back to us with substantive, with solid questions from each board member being covered. And I'll be happy to work with Mr. Popowitz, as having sat through the entire comment period as well, in giving some broad issues that I think that as a county we need answered. And I think that's what I would like to see us do as a board, and make a determination based on that.
Mr. Chairman, just one thing, if I will, please. Is it possible to schedule an informational meeting between the Army, the Hill, as well as the Port Royal residents, or at least the Port Royal individuals that were here tonight providing the information, so that this board, we can write resolutions, but again, if you don't know all the details of what's happening, how can you make sense out of that resolution? You understand, Mr. Seeley, have been very involved in the process. Unfortunately, I have not. I don't believe some of the other board members have been that involved. I would like to be able to have the same information given to me that you've been given to you, and maybe I should have been at the 7th. But personally, I don't know that we received any information that there was a meeting on the 7th. If we did, I was away anyway, so out of town.
I will
But
say
again,
that the board, that entire meeting was videotaped by Fort AP
but
Hill.
can we not have that meeting? Is there something wrong in the next 2 weeks? We cannot have a meeting if it's if you're available, Colonel and Mr. Lempley, if you're available, Ms. Long, if you're available. I think we as a board need to make ourselves available to an issue that's this important to the people of Caroline County. And I'm willing to do that, and I just hope that the board members would be willing. And once we've held that meeting, then I'm willing to support a resolution that's going to be meaningful for us all, and that we all understand what the ramifications are. That's all I'm asking.
Okay.
We could do that for an APO. We could do that.
All right, the board members have a recommendation of a date for the informational meeting.
We'll have to get back to you with that.
Okay,
Yeah.
and we'll work through Mr. Ashcraft's office. Yes, sir. You know, Mr. Thomas, Vice Chairman, would like to share his thoughts, and Mr. Thomas?
Colonel, I just want to say a couple of things real quick. And first, I want to thank you for your service, because if it wasn't for you, we wouldn't be able to have this meeting saying we disagree what the Army is going to do. In some countries, when you disagree what the Army is going to do, you kind of disappear. So we appreciate your service for that. I started this meeting with board comments saying we should have a resolution in support of the folks of Port Royal, and I really haven't changed my mind. You know, I understand what you're saying. I think it's important for us as a board to say we support those folks who are actually right in front of the issue. So I understand that, and I'm willing to go along with another meeting to make sure. But one of the things that Mr. Lampman kind of brought up in his conversations was there's $7 million, and I'm talking about specifically the economic impact to the county. There's $7 million worth of defense contracts for the county. And while he was talking, I kind of multitasked, of the top 10 of those do $5.9 million. So it's like really 10 businesses in the county that get most of that business. I mean, you got the school board on here as one of your defense contractors. I don't know what they do, but there's the hardware store on Main Street in Bowling Green is a defense contractor. Can you help us out a little bit more?
We can give you more detail on that. I can't give you that detail right now, sir.
Well, no, I'm not looking for detail. I'm looking for business.
I can't provide that for you right now.
Okay. I mean, I just want you to understand what we're trying to look for.
And we do get that question from Sharon Carter, Commissioner of Revenue, and we provide it through the Freedom of Information Act every year.
Oh, this is
Exactly who the contractors are.
This is the federal website. I'm online right now.
Sure.
I'm actually looking at your federal website, what they have for Caroline, which is I'm sure what Mr. Lampman got his data from. I just dug another step. So that's my only thing. And I've said this before. It's not the first time. Maybe it's the first time you heard it. But we used to get a lot more interaction with the soldiers out in the community. For whatever reason, your mission's changed. We don't get that anymore. We don't see the real impact.
Well, sir, if I may, I had a meeting with a friend at Roma's on Friday, and easily 3/4 of the people in there at lunch were Fort APO employees.
At Roma's?
Yes. So I want to make sure we're not scoping this all into one particular basket, right?
No, there's 4 or 5 different.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff, and there's everything from, you know, we can give you names from who we've rescued out of burning buildings, things of that nature. I'm not about to do that right now, but it's not all those dollar figures, but we can provide you with that, exactly what that consists of. Absolutely.
And really, we just want to stay good neighbors. That's part of what we're trying to do.
You bet, us too.
Okay, so it looks like we're definitely headed towards a informational meeting. We'll ask the county administrator to get with the folks who spoke tonight and to make sure that happens, so we can get some more understanding on our side, and just hope everyone can bear with us until we get that done, because we do need, you know, to have a few more facts to help us understand we really need to know. Okay?
Okay.
Well, thank you all for being here, and, you know, we're wanting to listen to everyone, and we'll do that.
Thank you, Mr.
So-
Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you all for being here for this. All right, we'll take a 5-minute recess. We have the request to issue the proposal for the RFP for the radio consultant. County Administrator, Mr. Alan Parton, will make that presentation. Mr. Parton.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, I'm going to make some general comments on the issue, introduce it, and would ask David Lehman and Mark Gooch to help me out with any technical related questions. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, as a result of a mandate issued by the FCC, the county has to convert its radio system from wideband to narrowband no later than January 1st, 2013. And the purpose of the mandate is to ensure the efficient use of technology and to also accommodate additional channels in the existing spectrum space. And all county radio systems, including the Sheriff's Office, Fire and Rescue, the county schools, and public utilities will be affected by this mandate. A committee was put together last year, chaired by Mr. Rozelle, and including all the stakeholders to come up with a strategy to address the issue. And as part of our work, we met with a representative named David Warner from the Virginia Information Technology Agency to receive some guidance on how to comply with the narrowbanding mandate. And through our discussions with Mr. Warner, we learned that complying with the mandate will not be as complicated or as expensive as we originally thought. We can achieve the compliance by submitting a request to renew our license, and also there'll be a need to replace some existing radios and pagers that aren't narrowband compatible, and at least one transmitter will also need to be replaced, and there may be some programming fees involved as well. The preliminary estimate that we have for that, and I stress that it is preliminary at this point, to take that approach is about $175,000. However, all the stakeholders on the committee agree that the issue goes deeper than simply taking or finding and taking the cheapest route possible to comply with the mandate. The county's current radio system has deficiencies that the approach I described will not solve. For example, let me back up and say, and some of the issues that we have may even be made worse by the narrowbanding conversion. For example, the current fire and rescue system can't handle high volumes of radio traffic during multiple incidents or large-scale incidents. And communication cannot be guaranteed between first responders and 911 dispatch in the sparsely populated areas of the county. These deficiencies obviously present potential public safety issues. In addition, the conversion to the narrowbanding is likely to compound an already existing problem with pagers and portable radios, again, in the less developed areas of the county. As the county's population grows and we add more buildings and houses, offices and so forth, a more robust system, communication system will be needed to provide adequate communications for emergency services providers. For all these reasons that I've just mentioned, the committee strongly feels that we need to develop a more comprehensive solution and wide-ranging solution to the problem than simply complying with the mandate for the $175,000 that I described. We believe the best course of action we can take is to hire a consultant. A consultant is needed to complete a comprehensive analysis of the county's current communications infrastructure and determine what options are available. This will ensure an approach that represents the best investment of county funds and also is the most effective for all the stakeholders for the longest period of time. The committee respectfully requests that the board authorize us to issue an RFP for a communications consultant. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Mr. Parton, then basically what I understand tonight, simply what you would like is the permission to go out on an RFP. not necessarily to accept and hire whoever has the low price, but basically to go out and get an RFP to see what the prices would be. And he's exactly right. With the experts that we do have, none of us are really, we're just not radio, experts. And we need somebody who knows the facts, so that when we do invest in the radio system, that we do get the best bang for the buck, the bottom line, and we're going to have an expert to do that. And we all agree on that. So really, simply all we need tonight is to approve to allow Mr. Parton to go out on RFP.
Mr. Chairman.
Okay, certainly we've got a question. We've got a motion and a second, but discussion.
Yes, I do have discussion. I just wanted to know, in the RFP, are we going to be asking the, I don't even know if this is possible with this type of thing, but are we going to be asking for a phase type project if we can do that over?
I think certainly that's an area we would want to look at.
Okay.
I think we want to consider all the options available. That would be an important part of the puzzle.
And if I may, as part of the discussions, if we move forward, between starting now and implementing a system that meets the regulations, starting now would meet the deadline of 2013. So we're right at the point where we got to get moving.
Okay. Yeah.
And if, where we can phase it, certainly.
It may not be possible. It may not be possible to do that, but certainly we want to look at that possibility.
Okay. Yeah, because I'm looking at the expanded part. We need to get to minimum requirements, and then, but anything beyond that, if it is possible to phase it over time, or if that's not possible, then fine. But I would like us to at least ask the question. That's the only comment I had, Mr. Chairman.
And the very minimum, where we talk about $175,000 to get it going, we can fix it. We could do that and get things going. And we would have a police officer weigh on it. Right now, with the wide spectrum that we're on, it will reach across the county. But now if we get on a different band, well, this band's not going to, if the band we have goes this far, the narrow bands are going to go only this far. Okay. So it's going to put some people in trouble if we try to make that Band-Aid work. Sure. So it's going to could require more infrastructure, including more towers.
Sure, and I guess what I'm getting at is, in our phasing, if there's a possibility of phasing that, then we'd want to eliminate the most maximum amount of problems in that phasing as well. So, right. I'm not disagreeing with you, Mr. Chairman. I'm just saying that.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll let the consultants to look at what's going to be the best for the people that we put out on the front line to protect us, whether it be in fire and rescue or the police department. We want to make sure that they're protected as well as we're protected as county citizens. So whatever the consultant comes up with that's going to accomplish those goals, that's what I would think we'd want to happen.
Yeah, and I'm not.
That's what you're saying. I understand.
Yeah, I'm looking from a cost standpoint. As we go forward, we want to make sure we have at least a minimum coverage, and then if we need expanded coverage and other things, we want to make sure that we can afford it.
All right, and what we're looking at, really are just some basic systems. We can look at systems that put data into our vehicles. We could go that far. Or we're just looking at, really right now, looking at systems to make sure the radios work.
Sure.
And that's kind of how wide it can go, what we do. So
absolutely. Okay.
We'll probably have to do what we can afford to do. All right, call for question. Motion been made, proper second by Mr. Thomas. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Parton. Next, the first reading for proposed amendment of Chapter A 130 Code of Virginia Cable Television Franchise. All right, Andy?
Yes, I'll be explaining the changes. The last time the modified cable franchise ordinance was before you in November, it simply established the framework for how franchises would be adopted in the county, or cable ordinance franchises, either by cable ordinance or a negotiated franchise, and it was based solely on the language of state law. And the question arose, are there other provisions that we can put in that would be able to, give the county some more tools to deal with existing providers who are operating, without a new franchise and still don't have a cable ordinance. And while state law narrowly regulates what localities can do now, under the Federal Communications Act, it looks like equipment and facilities can still be regulated. So what we did is we went back and looked at the newer agreements that we had been negotiated and are currently in the franchise agreement with MetroCast. So they're the same types of terms that the providers are very aware of and we had talked to them about, but then also surveyed other ordinances really from all over to see if there were some other terms that could possibly fit within that narrow facilities and equipment sort of a definition. And so what we've done is included those also in this modified ordinance for you. We also added back the construction standards and permitting standards because since those deal with the construction of the facilities and the equipment, we thought that those were legitimate regulations as well. So what you see there's a red line copy in your packet, and on page 7 on the red line, you'll see the system characteristics. The first one of which also requires that the cable systems have to meet customer service and technical standards. So now there's some teeth in there that customer service standards, the federal customer service standards have to be met. Federal technical standards have to be met. In subsection B, the following facilities and equipment standards have to be met. I would point out in number 13, the facilities and equipment has to ensure the grantee substantially complies with all applicable laws, which is fairly broad and which would relate to the rest of the ordinance. So, there's some provisions in here that could be used to piggyback some of the other provisions of the ordinance. And then the construction and maintenance standards are there, and they get one for several pages. So we did everything we could in putting some more teeth in here, and based on what we understood were some of the real problems that residents were seeing based on our meeting with Mr. Ashcraft and Mr. Parton and Mr. Fincham, we thought that for those concerns, there would be a way now within these revisions that an enforcement action could be taken. I mean, it would still involve a notice of violation or, some other notice being given to the franchise, to the provider, hey, you're in violation of the ordinance, and then it would have to go through a court process. Depending on what the violation is, some of these may still be very technical, and so it's still, not an easy, thing to do, but at least the framework is set up so that, if it's decided, look, this is just too much of a problem, we're going to take some action, you've at least got the framework to do that. Where it goes from there and what the cost is, and, what court, how the court would deal with it, that would be something that would have to be determined later on, but at least that's in there. And I modified the enforcement provision so that it's clear, because it's a criminal penalty, but we also made sure that it was also a civil action, or a civil action was available to the county if we wanted to go that route and get a judge to declare you're in violation of the ordinance and then issue an order, you must do, whatever it is they're not doing that folks are worried about. So it's got the teeth I think the board was looking for. It's still an imperfect process, but it's hopefully better than what we had before in that respect. So I'll answer any questions.
All right, board members have questions on the first reading of that's been presented. Mr. Popowitz?
I don't have any comment.
All right, Mr. Akers?
I still, Comcast, they, of course, have dragging their feet, or they say we're dragging our feet, and I say they're dragging their feet on trying to come up with a franchise agreement with Comcast. This ordinance, I think, may help us deal with those people a little bit better than what we've been able to deal with in the past. The second issue is the fact that, Lord, I know that you're in technology. I was called today and was told that Comcast is running some type of line up in the, off of Route 2, down the, what's that road called now, 606?
Oh, that's Stonewall Jackson Road.
Stonewall Jackson Road.
That's MetroCast.
Oh, they told me Comcast.
No, it's MetroCast.
Okay.
No.
MetroCast has been in that area for probably 4 or 5 months.
Yeah.
Once they announced they would expand from Port Royal, as a matter of fact, I actually stopped at their office today, and they expect to have a better service in the spring, is what they said.
I see.
But that's all MetroCast.
I was thinking it was MetroCast as well, and I asked him, and he said, no, it's Comcast. And I said, well, okay, I didn't realize Comcast was up there, but that's, okay, that's good.
Yeah, they're coming down Villaboro Road as well. They're upgrading their system now, Villaboro Road, and also down through Jackson Shrine. No, Stonewall Jackson Road.
So Comcast basically has not communicated with us, have not been
Well,
responsive in any way.
no. After our meeting, which was I guess it was in November, after we had our last meeting, I contacted Marie Schuler, to see, because we had heard that they were saying that the county was somehow at fault for this not moving
Yes.
forward. When it had always been, we had to come to this negotiated franchise, and Marie and I were just tweaking the final language, and then all of a sudden Comcast said, we're not going to do the upgrade. And we don't know, and I think Mr. Thomas, that was what they had represented during the technology meetings, that they weren't going to do it, that they had just put it on hold indefinitely. And so without the upgrade, there wasn't a real push to go forward, and give them another long-term contract. But I did contact her to see what the status of that was, or if, we could work out something else, or at least to find out what they thought the county was, doing wrong. And I only heard back from her a week ago. And so after several attempts.
Yeah.
And so finally, actually, I spoke to her yesterday and explained to her we were going to have this meeting, and MetroCast had signed their agreement, which actually was just signed tonight. I mean, finally executed, that was moving forward, and that if there was something that we needed to do, let us know. And so I believe she contacted Mr. Ashcraft and said that they would have a response to my inquiry within a couple of weeks, because I indicated, Marie, as far as I knew, we were ready to go except for the upgrade. I said if there is something we could work out, without putting the upgrade on the shelf, at least in the short term, let's talk about it, do something, talk to us. And so I'm hoping to hear back. Well, she said in 2 weeks. I think for Comcast, sometimes that means 2 months. But so, we're still pushing them and trying to, get something, some kind of agreement. But I will let the board know when I hear back.
Is it possible to, we start shopping around as a county to see if there are other companies that would be interested in coming in to provide service in the areas that Comcast now provides services in? I don't know that we have, as a county, gone out and shopped and said, hey, Company A, would you be interested in coming in if something happened? And we may have to do something. But I think that it's come to the point now where Comcast is, again, I've said this many times before, they have thumped their nose at us time and time and time and time and time again. It is quite evident that Comcast could care less about Caroline County customers. And I really do. It bothers me that this company, I know they're large, I know they're extremely large company, but it does bother me that they're able to treat our citizens the way that they treat our citizens and don't even respond. I mean, they just absolutely have sometimes I think they've just crossed out Caroline County off of that service area and say, they're going to take what we give them and that's it. I don't care what they have to say. So my question is, can we shop around to find someone else that may be interested in taking over the areas that they're servicing?
Certainly, the county could look at seeing if there are any other interested providers that would want to come in and, buy out their system.
They don't have to buy out their system. If they don't have a franchise agreement, what's that to buy other than just the cable that is on the poles and the other company will not have to run them? But if they want to come in and run their run their lines on poles, they wouldn't have to buy anything from Comcast.
From the limited conversations I've had with other providers, I think some of them, particularly the smaller ones, are very nervous about looking like they were, they don't want to be perceived as being a part of any franchise revocation. Well, it seems clear to the board and everybody in the county that there's every reason to revoke the franchise.
Right.
What we don't want to have happen is for the county for Comcast to take any action and claim that the revocation was based on an attempt to, get them out and get somebody else in. And so I think that the providers are very concerned about that and don't want to be perceived as, somehow, working to squeeze somebody out. So, what the county's options are as far as getting somebody else to take over, I mean, we could certainly look at that. But how it would ultimately happen, either through buying out Comcast system or, some other type of arrangement, I just don't know. I
can care less how it happens.
Yeah.
It's just the fact that we need to provide better service to the people that now have Comcast and that are getting lousy service and not getting any additional services. That's all I'm getting at. I don't care how it happens personally, just so that Comcast gets out of the picture, unless they're willing to step up to the plate and to upgrade their system the way that everybody else is upgrading their systems. Comcast needs to do the same thing. And my thoughts are, if they're not willing to do it, the sooner and the quicker we can get them out of the picture, the better off our citizens are and the county is as well. Mm-hmm. I don't know that are they paying their, there's a franchise fee. I don't even think they're paying that.
They don't have an agreement.
Well, there's a tax now. The franchise fees have been done away with, so now they pay taxes that go to the state. And I thought at some point we did look at that, and it's a very small amount. It goes to the state. The state has a pot of money, and then it's dispersed back to the localities, not based on the amount of revenues within the county, based on some other calculation that's, I think, less than what we got before.
Okay, let's certainly. Mr. Seeley, you finished, Mr. Akers?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Seeley, do you have any points on the?
No, I'll just echo Mr. Akers' frustration with the western side of the county.
Mr. Thomas?
I think I'm going to work with Ms. Cosby and maybe Mr. Wilson to see if we can try to talk to another vendor, if that'll get Comcast started. Sometimes those discussions or flirtations with other companies often make the original suitor like you a little bit more. So let's try it that way and we'll see what happens.
Okay, so, and I had to agree too that, I had a constituent call say throw them out, and if there was a way that I knew they would lose their service tomorrow, I'd agree too, let's throw them out. But, when we're dealing with a company that big, they have a whole lot more money for attorneys than we do, so we got to kind of be careful what we ask for.
Verizon Fios is coming there soon.
Yeah, the competition sometimes.
Did you know Verizon Fios is coming?
But as far as the really tonight, do we need to move forward, a motion to move forward to the second reading? March 9th. Public hearing March 9th.
Yep.
Need a motion for that?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Well, okay. I was was avoiding the February meeting altogether. I was hoping we could at least get it on the first meeting in March. It's 2 months.
Yeah.
I was at least trying to get you to.
We just have a minimum of.
I can't meet the
maximum
20.
of
We
2
can't meet the
public
26th deadline, and the 9th we wanted to avoid altogether. So I was at least trying to get it on the first one in March.
Do I need to amend my motion then?
So you do?
All right, so what date are we going back to?
March 9th.
March 9th? Okay, then I will not amend my motion.
Well, that's what you said, then, wasn't it?
All
Okay.
right.
All right. Motion made and properly second for the March 9th, second reading in public hearing. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion carries. All right. Next, we had the county administrator's report. I think you see the new process that the administrator had laid before us, and it's all out there for us. Mr. Ashcraft, we appreciate that, the way you laid it out for us, and no doubt we should know what's going on. Any comments to anything from the county administrator's report?
My only comment, Mr. Chairman, is the fact that, and it's not about the report, it's about one item. I want to really thank Senator McDougall for getting involved in the rate case with Aqua, Virginia, and Lake Landor, and he's having a meeting on the 19th of January. That's going to, and we'll be also talking about Ladysmith, the Campbell's Creek subdivision, and the others. And he's also going to have the people there from the State Cooperation Commission, and I really do appreciate Senator McDougall doing that and making this happen, because it's something that I think he is probably the only one that could have gotten that to happen.
Okay. All right. Any other comments on the points of the county administrator's report? All right. Let's move ahead. We got closing board comments. Board members have closing comments.
I have none, Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Eggers?
No, sir.
Mr. Seeley?
I have one comment on the capital project status. And this month is different than the previous month, and I'm just curious, we have 2 Caroline Pines projects that we hadn't had in the past. And I'm just wondering how we ended up with 2 and what the difference is and why we're just seeing the second one for the first time this month.
We just approved that water line extension, Mr. Chairman, probably in November,
Right.
after the last, this is the water line that's running, we agreed to
Yeah.
run this line
Then new 652.
right down 652 using proper money because of the road work that was being done. We went ahead and ran the water line now rather than having to tear up the roadway and to do those other things later on. It was
It's
much
probably
less costly.
mislabeled.
I'm sorry?
It's probably mislabeled. It should be the 652 water
Yeah, I
line.
think,
Yeah.
That's really
I think so.
what it
It's-
Towards Caroline Pines.
Yes,
is what it
toward
was.
Caroline Pines. It's not
I
going to
guess
Caroline
that's
Pines.
what my confusion
well
was, is I
said.
Yeah.
didn't realize what this was or how it ended up there.
was. It's just mislabeled, that's all.
Okay,
Yeah, but that was the
I'm glad you said that.
the one that goes out in new.
okay, that, I remember
New road
that. I just-
project.
When I saw this, it didn't make any sense.
Right, no, that's,
Okay. Closing board comments, none from Mr. Popowitz, Mr. Akers,
I'm through.
Mr. Seeley,
No, sir.
Mr. Thomas, and I have none as well. Mr. Vice Chairman, if you would.
All righty, you know I never read all this anyhow. So I'd move that the board convene in closed session pursuant to Prospective Business Exemption Section 2.2-3711A5, Code of Virginia, to provide information to the board on the type of business, potential location, and for consultation with legal counsel, exemption to Section 2.2-3711A7 of the Code of Virginia to discuss legal advice, and the investment of public funds exemption of Section 2.2-3711A6, where competition or bargaining is involved. That's the motion.
Second.
Motion made and
Oh.
properly second.
I'm sorry.
In Section A.
The second part of the one is regarding an unsolicited PPA proposal.
Okay.
And that was the motion, okay. Your second.
All right.
I second.
And, okay, motion now made and properly second. All in favor that we go into closed meeting, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion carried. We'll be now in a closed meeting. closed meeting. The board members certify that the only thing we talked about in closed meeting?
No, we got to certify first.
You gotta make a motion to come out of closed session.
That's right.
Yes.
Make a motion to come out of closed session.
Second.
Motion made, pop second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion carries. Members certify that the only thing we discussed in closed session are those pertaining to what we went in for. Mr. Popovich.
I so certify.
Mr. Akers.
I so certify.
Mr. Seeley.
I so certify.
Mr. Vice Chairman.
I so certify.
And I so certify as well. Business item?
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, I would make a motion that the county accept the PPEA proposal that was submitted to us and continue with the PPEA process, meaning that the proposal will be posted on our website tomorrow.
Second.
Second.
Okay, motion made and proper second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Okay, I think that's all the business that we have for this evening.
Motion to adjourn?
And definitely in order, motion made and proper second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Those opposed, motion carried. Meeting's adjourned.